It's a strange thing to think about. A machine that was the very first to touch the edge of space, the granddaddy of the rockets that would one day take us to the moon. But that same machine was also a terrifying weapon, born from a brutal regime and literally built on the backs of enslaved people. This is the story of the V-2 rocket, and it's a story of incredible genius, unimaginable horror, and a legacy that is, well, it's complicated. And these two images, they really say it all, don't they? On one side, you see the V-2 as this marvel of engineering, sleek and almost futuristic, sitting in a museum. But on the other side, you see the cold, hard reality of what it was. A captured weapon of war, on display in the ruins of Antwerp, a city it was built to terrorize. This contrast, this split personality, is really at the heart of the entire story. So what exactly was this thing? Well, the V-2 was the world's very first long-range ballistic missile. Now, unlike a simple rocket that just goes up, this one was guided. It would shoot straight up, fly in this massive arc high above the atmosphere, and then plummet down onto its target at supersonic speeds. That meant you never heard it coming. It was a brand new, terrifying way to wage war. And the power it had was just immense. I mean, if you launched a V-2 straight up instead of at a target, it could reach an altitude of 206 kilometers. That's about 128 miles. That made it the very first man-made object to cross the Kármán line, which is the official boundary of outer space. So yeah, a terrifying weapon for sure, but also humanity's very first step off the planet. This duality is baked right into its name. To the engineers who designed it, it was just the Aggregate 4, or A4 for short. It was the fourth in a series of their test rockets. But to the Nazi propaganda machine, oh no. It became the Vergeltungswaffe 2, the Vengeance Weapon 2, a name designed to do one thing: inspire fear and promise brutal payback. So how did a weapon like this even come to be? Well, it didn't start with dreams of war. It started with a dream of reaching the stars. And this is the guy, Wernher von Braun, the brilliant and controversial mind behind it all. As a teenager back in the 1920s, he got totally swept up in this rocket fad that was going around. He was just devouring books about space travel and even got into trouble with the cops for strapping fireworks to a wagon and launching his own rocket car down a crowded street. His passion wasn't war, it was space. And his progress was just incredibly fast. From just helping out with early tests in 1930, he really quickly caught the eye of the German military. They saw the potential for a whole new kind of long-range artillery. By 1934, with the Army's money, his rockets were soaring. And this all led to the first successful flight of the A4 rocket in October of 1942. And this quote right here, it tells you everything about the mindset of the guys who built it. On that day, the military head of the whole project, General Walter Dornberger, he didn't say, "We have a new weapon." He said, "This is the first day of a new era, that of space travel." For them, this was the key to unlocking the cosmos. But their dream was about to become an absolute nightmare for thousands of people. The path from that dream of exploring space to creating a weapon of war was a dark one, a really brutal one. At first, Hitler wasn't even that impressed. He thought the A4 rocket was way too expensive and complicated. But by 1943, the war was turning against Germany and he was getting desperate. He needed a wonder weapon, something to boost morale at home and threaten the Allies. So the A4 rocket program was completely taken over, renamed the V-2, and rushed into mass production. And the human costs of that production, it's just staggering. To protect the factory from Allied bombs, they moved the whole operation into a huge underground facility called Mittelwerk. And who built the rockets? Forced laborers from the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp, working in conditions that were basically hell on earth. It's estimated that 20,000 prisoners died right there in the camp. The V-2 attacks themselves, mostly hitting London and Antwerp, were pure terror. They struck without any warning, moving faster than sound. In total, they killed an estimated 9,000 civilians and military personnel. Now, here's the number that just stops you in your tracks. While 9,000 people were killed by the V-2 as a weapon, the source material points out that another 12,000 concentration camp prisoners and forced laborers died just building it. Think about that for a second. The creation of the rocket was more deadly than its actual use in the war. So when the war finally ended, you'd think the story of the V-2 would be over. But it was far from it. In fact, you could say its second life ended up being even more influential than its first. And this is the central paradox of the V-2. For all the terror it caused, for all the money and lives poured into it, post-war studies all concluded it had almost zero real impact on the outcome of World War II. As a weapon, it was basically a failure. But as a piece of technology, oh, it was the single most sought-after prize of the entire war. The second Germany surrendered, a totally new race began. American, British, and Soviet teams were scrambling over each other to grab everything they could, leftover rockets, blueprints, and most important of all, the scientists and engineers. Through a top-secret program called Operation Paperclip, the United States brought Wernher von Braun and over 1,600 of his colleagues to America to work for them. And when you look at a diagram like this, you can see exactly why it was such a hot commodity. This was not some simple firework. We're talking a powerful liquid fuel engine, crazy sophisticated turbopumps, and a gyroscopic guidance system that was light years ahead of anything else at the time. This technology became the direct foundation for both the American and the Soviet missile programs that defined the Cold War. Which brings us to today, and the complicated inheritance we're all left with from this one machine, a legacy of both profound terror and incredible triumph. And this, right here, is the most startling part of the whole story. There is a direct, unbroken line. The same man, Wernher von Braun, who spearheaded the V-2 terror weapon, went on to become the chief architect of the Saturn V rocket for NASA. The very machine that finally fulfilled his childhood dream and carried humanity to the moon was a direct descendant of the V-2. So, in the end, the story of the V-2 leaves us with this really difficult, really uncomfortable question. It represents this monumental leap forward in science and engineering that literally opened the door to the cosmos. But that door was kicked open from a foundation of slavery, terror, and mass death. It forces us to ask ourselves, how do we waste scientific progress when it's born from such an immense human tragedy?